Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lauren Izo, and coming up in this edition, Operation Rock of Israel is underway. This morning, hundreds of Ethiopian Jews landed in the country. The most advanced warship the Israel Navy has ever seen gets a warm welcome upon its arrival at the Haifa port. And Bahrain causes a stir as its trade minister vows to import products from West Bank settlements. Emotional scenes this morning as hundreds of new immigrants descended the steps of an Ethiopia Airlines flight to their new home in Israel. Welcomed by Prime Minister Netanyahu and other officials, including Minister of Aliyah and Absorption, Pnina Tamano-Shata, who herself is of Ethiopian descent. Take a look at the arrival of the inaugural flight of Operation Rock of Israel. Nittany Manson reports.
עולי אתיופיה, אנחנו כל כך נרגשים לקבל אתכם כאן. ברוכים הבאים לארץ ישראל, ברוכים הבאים למדינת ישראל. אתם הגעתם בטיסה ישירה מגונדר, הורים וילדים.
ירושלים בזריחות.
An Ethiopian Airlines flight landed Thursday morning at Ben Gurion Airport, carrying 316 members of the Falash Mora Jewish community.
אבל היום אנחנו שמחים, קודם כל בשמחת מאות המשפחות והעולים שהגיעו לארץ יחד איתי, נקבל אותם באהבה, נלווה אותם בתהליכי הקליטה, בתקופה מאתגרת זו.
Welcomed by the Prime Minister, Minister of Aliyah and Integration, the Defense Minister, and the Jewish Agency Chairman, the new immigrants posed for photos and waved Israeli flags as they exited the aircraft.
ואנחנו מאוד גאים, המטוסים הללו שאתה רואה מאחוריי הם כולם מטוסים שארגנה הסוכנות היהודית, מאות עובדים שעובדים שבועות להביא לכאן את העולים, ואני חייב להגיד לך, מה זה מרגש? חבל על הזמן.
Approximately 100 more immigrants from the Falash Mora community in Ethiopia will arrive on Friday, and in total the government intends to bring a total of 2,000 immigrants in total by the end of January 2021.
ראיתי תמונות שלכם, מחזיקים תמונות של הקרובים שלכם כאן בארץ, שאתם מייחלים לראותם והם מייחלים לראותכם, ועכשיו בא איחוד המשפחות הנפלא הזה. אתם המתנתם זמן רב להתגשמות החלום, והיום הוא מתגשם. הוא חלום כפול, הן החלום הפרטי שלכם והן החלום הציוני.
The new immigrants will spend 14 days in a COVID-19 quarantine center, after which they'll be transferred to absorption centers as they wait patiently for the rest of their families to join them.
חשוב מאוד שנשלים את המשימה ונביא את הממתינים באתיופיה לארץ בהקדם האפשרי.
First, though, they must get accustomed to their new home and learn to speak Hebrew. Nittany Manson, ILTV.
Michal Kotler-Wunsch is a member of Knesset from the Blue and White Party. She attended that emotional ceremony today. Thank you, Minister, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, what was this process like? What is the impression you got from those arriving? Were they relieved or were they intimidated being in a new place with a foreign language?
So first of all, it was one of the most singularly inspiring moments of my own life. I have to say, with tears in my eyes, watching what were exhausted individuals, what it was like for them, I can tell you, is they were exhausted, having traversed great lengths and kilometers in order to arrive to the airport, to be flown here, and of course, after a lengthy flight. It was very, very emotional. It was a moment of really what I would say the fulfillment of the mission, the vision of the value and the values of the state of Israel as we know them, as it was instated to be, the values it was enshrined upon, and really to be a witness at such a moment. And I will add to that, having Pnina Tamano-Shata, the Minister of Aliyah and Klita, walk off the plane with them, really in a full circle, having emigrated on her own in Operation Solomon at the age of 3, was really a historic moment to witness.
And what are the logistics involved in a mission like this, especially during a pandemic? Why can't we bring all 2,000 that are part of this mission at once? Why in stages?
So you can imagine, even just greeting them was not as welcoming as we would have liked. We came as close as we could. We were able to, wave to the children whose eyes we gazed at, and the mothers and fathers. And I should mention, they're all sons and daughters of people who have waited, some of them for 20 years, to see their children here in Israel. And you're right. These are the first few hundreds of the first 2,000 that the government committed to bringing by the end of January. And the remainder of those waiting, thousands that are in waiting in Gondar and in Addis Ababa, are to be brought by the end of 2022, according to the government decision. I want to say, as a member of the Aliyah and Klita Committee and as chair of the caucus for Ethiopians in Israel, that if that needs to be expedited because situation on the ground worsens, and we know we're in, you said, a pandemic, a global pandemic, COVID-19, I can tell you that it affects not only the rest of the world as we imagine, but you can imagine those awaiting who are actually not working, very many of them unable to either travel to school or to work, and are actually situations of children with malnourishment that the Sukhnut and other agencies are there, government agencies, to assist with. The Interior Ministry representatives are there now to make sure that the first 2,000 are brought. But part of what I describe now, and that is the interministerial and the interbody involvement in bringing them all, is what complicates matters. Certainly COVID-19, with everything that it implies, of course, quarantining once on the ground, but everything else you can imagine affects the ability to bring as quickly as we can. I will say that we are with a watchful eye, and if there is a need of real humanitarian crisis or danger with this looming war that we don't know how, if it will be contained and in what way it will affect those in waiting, then this has to be expedited. Then the decision to bring all those waiting that are eligible to come must be expedited and brought. And as you know, they've been waiting, as I mentioned, some of them for nearly 20 years.
Michal Kotler-Wunsch, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Moving on now, first the Passover lockdown, the Independence Day curfew, and then the high holidays closure. Once again, it looks like Israel is headed to another holiday at home. The COVID cases are rising, and so far no new restrictions from the government. According to officials, cases will continue to go up in the coming weeks. More in the next report.
For the first time since October, Israel's daily infection rate has surpassed 1,500, a grave milestone in the country's race to maintain a manageable curve. On Wednesday, the health ministry reported 1,568 new cases. There are currently 85 COVID patients on ventilators, and the death toll stands at 2,890. Officials are weighing in whether or not to increase restrictions, saying a lockdown over the Hanukkah holiday could be imminent.
אני חושש שאנחנו במהלך הימים הקרובים והשבוע הבא נראה עליית תחלואה. אני חושב ש-1,500 שהשיא השלילי שחזרנו אליו עכשיו, לצערי אני אומר, לא יהיה המספר הגבוה שאנחנו נראה במהלך שבוע הבא. ויצטרכו לקחת החלטה מה עושים בחנוכה.
The Director General of the Health Ministry, Professor Chezi Levy, says Israel will soon see 2,000 daily cases of COVID-19, and that we could be nearing a state of emergency. Meanwhile, for the first time in Israel, a man has died after contracting the virus a second time. According to Israeli media, the 74-year-old patient fully recovered from COVID back in August, and again showed symptoms of the virus before he passed away this week at Tel Aviv Hospital. So far, no additional restrictions have been announced, but according to officials, it's just a matter of time.
אנחנו מדברים על דברים נוספים, מגבלות של חוזרים מחול והקפדה על בידודים. אני יכול לומר לך שלא יהיו הקלות נוספות, ואנחנו לא נאפשר פתיחות נוספות, גם פיילוט הקניונים שיסתיים, אפילו אם יסתיים בהצלחה, זה לא יהיה הזמן לפתוח את הקניונים עכשיו.
The Czech Republic plans to open a branch of its Tel Aviv embassy in Jerusalem. The Czech foreign minister says that the new branch office will be set up in the first half of 2021 and will be manned by a diplomat. The Czech Republic currently has an embassy in Tel Aviv and 3 honorary consulates in Jerusalem, Eilat, and Haifa. The United States famously moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem back in 2018, declaring it the undivided capital of Israel, causing uproar from the Palestinians. Since, several countries have said they would follow suit, including Honduras, Serbia, Kosovo, and Malawi, but only Guatemala has followed through. Well, Israel received its most advanced warship on Wednesday, a SAR-6 vessel known as the INS Magen. It arrived in Haifa from Germany and will now be responsible for guarding Israeli gas rigs in the Mediterranean, especially now that tensions are heating up with Iran. 3 of the same model ships will follow next year, bringing the number of missile-carrying vessels deployed by the Israeli Navy to 15. Those ships regularly carrying out missions as far away as the Red Sea and the Gulf. Here's what the president had to say at the ceremony.
מערך הסטינים החדש של ספינות הסער 6 עתיד לשלב נשים לוחמות בוגרות קורס חובלים שיהוו 25% מהכוחות הלוחמים על כלים אלה. זרוע הים וצה"ל מוכיחים בכך שוב את החיבור שלהן לחברה הישראלית ואת הרלוונטיות של צה"ל כצבא העם בישראל, צבא של כל העם, של כולם.
One of the busiest ports in the world and Dubai's main shipping port has received one of its first shipments from Israel since the beginning of the Abraham Accords in September. The shipment sent by Emirati firm Kimoha from Ashdod contained adhesive tape manufactured by Israeli company Davik. The CEO and chairman of the port's operator, Dubai Ports World, said in a statement, "We take great pride in being involved in this momentous achievement that is integral for both countries." While Israeli technology is slowly making its way to the Gulf, one Israeli company that has developed a way to turn air into water, WaterGen, signed an agreement with an Emirati company to bring its water generator to the UAE. The deal signed last week in Abu Dhabi will focus on agriculture, offices, apartment buildings, hotels, and more. WaterGen's atmospheric water generators produce clean drinking water from the air using cost-effective energy consumption. High temperatures and humidity of the Emirates are an ideal condition for WaterGen's large-scale devices, which can produce up to 5,000 liters of clean drinking water per day. The machines are already used in several countries, including at the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia. A delegation of politicians and businessmen from Bahrain are visiting Israel for the first time since the Abraham Accords normalization deal was signed a few months ago. The two countries are estimating $220 million in non-defense trade alone in 2021.
Fascinated by how integrated the IT and innovation sector in Israel has been embedded in every facet of life, whether it's simple solutions on apps or technology in cars or medicine or irrigation. And I think all these could be easily adaptable into Bahrain for daily consumption, daily lifestyle.
Meanwhile, Bahrain's Industry, Commerce and Tourism Minister said in an interview on Thursday that despite the Palestinians who oppose this new deal, the Gulf Kingdom is open to importing goods from West Bank settlements.
We will treat Israeli products as Israeli products. So we have no issue with labeling or origin. And if the product conforms with our set of standards and codes, then it will be accepted and entered into Bahrain.
Okay, let's bring in Seth Frantzman. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of a new news publication called the Israel Gulf Report. Thank you, Seth, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So firstly, you've been a journalist for many years. Why did you decide to launch the Israel Gulf Report other than the obvious reasons of the Abraham Accords?
Well, because we all know that if you're a journalist, you're able to cover daily issues, but what you end up doing is you're just getting a very small slice of the cake. And I realized that it just seemed to me that we have so many different things that are going on every day in the Gulf and Israel, which is whether it's trade or high tech or culture, religion. You know, it's not just the big diplomatic visits, which of course those matter, but I think what we'll see in the future is the need to have a platform in which many other people can participate, and social media, and you can kind of help to cement and support and spotlight this blossoming relationship. And I started it as a place that people could meet and people can go. It's not just a website, it's social media, it's other things. And so hopefully it will kind of organically grow from there and become something that helps to be a kind of, let's say, a center of a web of information relating to the Israel and Gulf relations.
Well, you're obviously going to have a lot of news to write about, but let's talk about the news of today for a second. The Bahraini minister who's visiting Israel made a comment about importing goods from West Bank settlements. Do you think it's a slap in the face to the Palestinians that they're saying that they are willing to import products from West Bank settlements?
I'm not sure. I mean, certainly I think it would help the Palestinian economy if they will import different things from the West Bank. So some of them may come from Israeli settlements or be manufactured by Israelis, some of them by Palestinians. I guess they'll have to work that out. I mean, I don't know if the West Bank is really a giant center of production in terms of the types of products that Bahrain is going to want. So is Bahrain going to be importing a lot of wine from the West Bank? Maybe not. So maybe the kind of high-tech things that Bahrain wants actually are produced more in Tel Aviv. But if someone raises a question as to, yeah, but wait, was some part of that chip built over the Green Line? I suppose what the statement seemed to indicate was that no, if some portion of that product has some connection to over the Green Line, that's not going to be an issue for them.
Interesting. Okay. And, you know, the trip in general, it was quite a show they put on. It was filled with press conferences and meetings. I wonder how you think this trip is going to define or set up the future of relations between Israel and its new Gulf friends.
I think this was the second big high-profile Bahrain trip. They had the foreign minister here a few weeks ago, and now they've got the Minister of Trade and Tourism. So I think these are, of course, those would be key elements of the peace deal, right? A foreign ministry and then the trade, tourism. I think it's a good sign. It shows that Bahrain wants to be first. Bahrain wants to have very big high-level visits. What has to come next, I think, is an air traffic flights to Bahrain, because we're seeing with the UAE a lot of flights already and plans for dozens a day or something. So I think there are big question marks about what comes next. So flights would be important. Obviously, some tourism, back and forth, visa exemptions. I think those are going to be issues that have to be ironed out.
We're talking a lot about non-defense trade. I wonder when you think we're going to begin talking about defense trade and how much money will be spent in that.
It's a very good question. I was in touch a few times with the Ministry of Defense asking, because they have, of course, very strict export controls about certain things. Part of that relates to the fact that the United States and Israel do a lot of defense work together. So, Israel's Elbit or Rafael or II, they have contracts, with U.S.-based companies, whether it's Lockheed or what have you. So there are going to be big question marks there. I think there's a lot of smaller companies in Israel that make things like drones or surveillance or electro-optics, which Israel is very, very good at. I would think that those companies will want to be over there. And I think the question is, when that will be public information and when the export agreements will take place. And it looks like then trade could be big. I mean, that's the generally Israel's defense companies are some of the largest in the world. We're talking about billions of dollars a year in sales. So I think you could see the Gulf, certainly there's a potential market of hundreds of millions or things in that ballpark, I would assume.
Right. Okay. Lots of interesting developments. Seth Fransman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Drones are being used in Israeli agriculture for several purposes, this time for livestock. Take a look at how unmanned aircrafts are herding cows in Israel's north.
The barking of dogs has been replaced by buzzing motors at this cow ranch in Israel. Amid the global pandemic, they have resorted to drones to herd their livestock. The remote-controlled quadcopters hover near the cows, which, perceiving them as potential predators, are prodded along while live video of their movements is relayed back to the farmers.
Using a drone instead of cowboys and dogs creates a much less stressful environment for the animals. And an animal that is less stressful is a lot healthier and more productive.
The drones also offer more efficient control of large droves and pastures. And there has been interest from the United Arab Emirates, which in September established formal relations with Israel.
Lately, we've been contacted by the Emirates to see if our solution can work for camels. And we're going next month to present their solution. And we can now say that we can definitely move animals around open ranges and help with herding and grazing of camels as well.
The company, called Beef Free Agro, is based in the northern Israeli town of Rosh Pinah. They say their technology will save time, money, and create a new interest in an old trade.
And we're giving them a tool that will bring this next generation back into this industry, that will make this a more profitable and a more sustainable way of life.
So if you're new to Israel and looking to buy or rent an apartment, you may need some help learning how to keep up with the bargaining mentality you see everywhere from the food markets to even real estate. Israeli negotiating is tough, and you need to be able to stand your ground and have the upper hand. Here to give us some insight as to why real estate professionals are so valuable is Skyview Real Estate's Eyal Katz. Hey, Eyal, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so the thing I'm most curious about is what are the biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to negotiate to buy a property?
I can tell you, I see it all the time. People get emotional. And when
Interesting.
Yeah, when it comes to selling your own flat, or let's say your mom's flat that you were raised there all your life, you get emotional.
Of course, you're attached to it.
Yeah, and when you get emotional, you make mistakes. Okay, people don't have the right experience negotiating that kind of a deal. Second mistake I see is when people are selling their own house, they're like talking too much, they're getting enthusiastic, they're showing too much. And if you have a little bit of experience, you can pick it up and you can take it to your advantage. There is another, it's not related to the price, but people tend to take family members as experts, if it's for lawyers or architects or negotiators. And I can give you a tip, leave family members to be family members.
So at the end of the day, it's better to leave it to the professionals, you're saying. Maybe you can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, a professional real estate agent, we have like a system that holds all the data and the history. So if an owner publishes an ad, I can see what date he published that ad, and I can see the history. So if he did any change, I can see it in my system. So if he took the price up or down, I can see what date and from which price he took it down to which price. And then if I'm going to negotiate with him, I have a better advantage than before. Apartments in Israel, and especially in Tel Aviv, cost many millions. I say don't be a hero. If you never conducted such a negotiation, get yourself a professional to be on your side. He will save you a lot of money.
Okay, and obviously, like I said in my introduction, negotiating is not necessarily for everyone. Not everyone is a good negotiator, bargainer. So what is the best advice you can give to somebody who maybe isn't the best at it?
First of all, negotiation, I love it. You see people get stressed, get red, moving, not comfortable.
That reminds me of myself, actually.
So you need to take like courses or do it more. I can give you this tip, know yourself. When I say know yourself, I mean know your weaknesses. If you're not good negotiating one-on-one or in a meeting room, then go to your comfort zone. If your comfort zone is a coffee house or your own house, then bring the meeting over there. And if you're not comfortable with that, you can always submit a written proposal. And if you're not familiar with that, I said it before and I'll say it again, take yourself a professional to guide you and to stand by your side. He can also save you money, and he can guide you the whole process through to do it the right way. Sometimes that's the difference between making the deal or not making the deal.
Wonderful. Some really great tips. Eyal Katz, thank you so much for coming. And of course, if our viewers want any more information, they can check out your website, which is written right on our screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, it's time to take a look at the weather forecast. Time to get those heaters out. Tonight will be 54 degrees Fahrenheit or 12 degrees Celsius. Friday, we'll see partly cloudy skies with highs of up to 73 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees Celsius. Saturday will be a high of 70 Fahrenheit or 21 degrees Celsius. And just before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. Okay, my only comment is that whoever posted this video of this dog, who's really cute, spelt dramatic wrong. I don't understand, but yeah, that dog is very dramatic, almost as dramatic as my dog, who's really, really a drama queen. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.28 shekels to the American dollar and 2.53 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Lauren Izzo. Thanks for watching.